Buongiorno dalle colonie extramondo. Nei due video precedenti abbiamo visto come ha reagito e si è organizzato il Nimitz Strike Group quando hanno visto gli UFO sui loro radar. Abbiamo scoperto che per qualche motivo ignoto sono state cancellate le registrazioni audio che vengono registrate automaticamente su supporti ottici non cancellabili in modo da essere certi di non perdere le registrazioni. Abbiamo scoperto che stazionavano a 80.000 piedi, circa 24.000 metri, e si muovevano a circa 100 nodi, che sono scesi a livello del mare in 0,78 secondi, senza produrre boom sonici, il che è impossibile per qualsiasi velivolo, oltre al fatto che si distruggerebbe a causa dell'elevatissima forza di gravità. In questo episodio vediamo la storia di due dei piloti che sono stati mandati ad intercettare gli UFO, su due diversi aerei, ognuno con due piloti a bordo.
David Fravor, a graduate of the Top Gun Naval Flight School and commander of the F-18 squadron on the USS Nimitz, and flying at his wing, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich, who has never spoken publicly about the encounter.
I never wanted to be on national TV, no offense.
So why are you doing this?
Because I was in a government aircraft, because I was on the clock, and so I feel a responsibility to share what I can, and it is unclassified.
It was November 2004, and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was training about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. For a week, the advanced new radar on a nearby ship, the USS Princeton, had detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. On November 14th, Fravor and Dietrich, each with a weapons system officer in the back seat, were diverted to investigate. They found an area of roiling whitewater the size of a 737 in an otherwise calm blue sea.
So, as we're looking at this, her backseater says, "Hey, Skipper, do you?" And about that got out, I said, "Dude, do you see that thing down there?" And we saw this little white Tic Tac looking object, and it's just kind of moving above the whitewater area.
As Dietrich circled above, Fravor went in for a closer look. So sort of spiraling down?
Yep. The Tic Tac's still pointing north-south. It goes and just turns abruptly and starts mirroring me. So as I'm coming down, it starts coming up.
So it's mimicking your moves.
Yeah, it was aware we were there.
He said it was about the size of his F-18, with no markings, no wings, no exhaust plumes.
I'll see how close I can get. So I go like this, and it's climbing still. And when it gets right in front of me, it just disappears.
Disappears?
Disappears. Like gone.
It had sped off. What are you thinking?
So your mind tries to make sense of it. I'm going to categorize this as maybe a helicopter or maybe a drone. And when it disappeared, I mean, it was just...
Did your backseaters see this too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There was 4 of us in the airplanes literally watching this thing for roughly about 5 minutes.
Seconds later, the Princeton reacquired the target, 60 miles away. Another crew managed to briefly lock onto it with a targeting camera before it zipped off again.
You know, I think that over beers, we've sort of said, hey, man, if I saw this solo, I don't know that I would have come back and said anything because it sounds so crazy when I say it.
You understand that reaction?
I do. I've had some people tell me, you know, when you say that, you can sound crazy. And I'll be honest, I'm not a UFO guy.
But from what I hear you guys saying, there's something.
Yes.
Oh, there's definitely something that, I don't know who's building it, who's got the technology, who's got the brains, but there's something out there that was better than our airplane.
The aircrew filed reports. Then, like the mysterious flying object, the Nimitz encounter disappeared. Nothing was said or done officially for 5 years, until Lou Elizondo came across the story and investigated.
We spend millions of dollars in training these pilots, and they are seeing something that they can't explain. Furthermore, that information is being backed up on electro-optical data, like gun camera footage, and by radar data. Now, to me, that's compelling.
Inside the Pentagon, his findings were met with skepticism. ATIP's funding was eliminated in 2012, but Elizondo says he and a handful of others kept the mission alive, until finally, frustrated, he quit the Pentagon in 2017. but not before getting these 3 videos declassified. And then things took a stranger turn.
I tried to help my colleague Lou Elizondo elevate the issue in the department and actually get it to the Secretary of Defense.
Christopher Mellon served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence for Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush, and had access to top-secret government programs.
So it's not us. That's one thing we know.
We know that.
I can say that with a very high degree of confidence, in part because of the positions I held in the department, and I know the process.
Mellon says he grew concerned nothing was being done about UAPs, so he decided to do something. In 2017, as a private citizen, he surreptitiously acquired the 3 Navy videos Elizondo had declassified and leaked them to the New York Times.
It's bizarre and unfortunate that someone like myself has to do something like that to get a national security issue like this on the agenda.
He joined forces with now civilian Lou Elizondo, and they started to tell their story to anybody who would listen.
Ascoltiamo David Fravor in un'altra intervista.
And then somebody in the Princeton said, "You're not going to believe this, sir. It's at your cap point." Now, that's a different place. How the heck did it know what your cap point is?
That's a good question. And that's the one, if you don't, no one, we don't tell it, we don't broadcast it. We have a waypoint in the system. But I don't know, maybe it knew where we were going, because we use the same one day after day after day.
Right, just use it.
But it obviously knew.
But you never saw it there.
Never saw it there. Chad, when he took off, when he got the video, we landed, we told them, "Hey, look, we just chased this thing. Dude, get video." And he goes, and he was determined that he was going to find this thing. So when you look at his video, and this is the stuff that isn't out, that they don't see, because not all all you see is the FLIR tape. That's the targeting pod, the forward-looking infrared receiver. When he goes out, it's, what he's looking at on his displays is he has basically 2 radar displays up. He has azimuth and range on the right one, and he has azimuth and elevation on the left one. So it's taking a cone, because a radar really looks left and right from a point, and it squares it out. So the entire bottom of the scope that we look at is us, because they do this. They square it off. So he goes out, and when he first sees it, he gets a radar return on it, because when he's not trying to lock it. So the radar's just throwing energy out and getting it. It's a Doppler radar. So when it's in search mode, that's all it's doing. It's going, "Oh, I can see you. I can see you." And it's looking for a return. So he gets a return. So he wants to see what it is, because all you get is a little green square, the little green square is just sitting there. It's not moving, because it's sitting in one spot in space. He locks it up. When he goes to lock it up, now he's putting a bunch of energy on it. Yeah. So he's telling the radar, "Stare down that line of sight, and whatever's there, I want you to grab it and build a track file on it, which will tell us how high it is, how fast it is, and the direction that it's going." Okay? The radar's smart enough that when the signal comes back, if it's been messed with, it will tell you, it'll give you indications that I'm being jammed. So that's all it is you send the signal out, it manipulates the signal either in range and velocity or whatever, and it sends it back. And the radar was smart enough to go, "That is not a return that I'm expecting. Something's messing with me. I'm being jammed." And it shows you, and it puts strobes up. It gives these lines on the radar, and it does some stuff. So, and
as you said on Rogan, by the way, that jamming is an act of war.
When you actively jam another platform, yes, it's technically an act of war. He has the ability to just move one switch real quick, and it will go from that azimuth elevation on the radar to the targeting pod. Well, as soon as he commanded the radar to look at that target, the targeting pod goes, "Oh, what's over there?" And it'll stare. When he moves that thing to the left and he swaps the displays out, and he says, "Instead of looking at the radar, I want to look at the targeting pod," he sees it on the targeting pod, because the targeting pod's already looking there. Mm-hmm. And now he's on a passive track, because he's not literally sending any energy out. He's just receiving IR energy from the Tic Tac, and then the system itself will track the pixels and the contrast differences. It depends on what mode you're in. So it says, "Oh," and that's where those little bars you see in the video, where the bars come up left and right.
Doing some vision-based tracking.
That's exactly what it is.
Changes zooms, changes the mode.
He goes through all the modes. So there's the narrow, medium, and wide. So wide is far away. There's the TV mode, and he goes from IR mode to the TV mode. The cool thing with the TV mode is narrow IR mode is only medium TV mode. So you can actually get closer with narrow TV mode. It's got a better zoom capability when you go into TV mode. So he goes through all those things. And that's when you see it going from a black background to a white background.
He's trying to figure out, what the heck is this?
Well, yeah, and he wants to get as much data as he can on it based on the different modes, instead of just staring at it going, "What is that thing?" Yeah. Granted, the video has been out. It actually was on YouTube for years.
And
before the government released it.
It was leaked 2007?
I got the guy that was in my back seat sent me an email, and I had retired. So this is because I was working down in San Diego. So this is about 2008, early 2009. He sends me a link to strangeland.com, which is not suitable for work. Oh, yeah, it's top notch.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, I can remember the email. Hey, Skip, does this look familiar? And I look at it, I'm like, how the hell did that get on strangeland.com? So next thing you know, it ends up on YouTube, which was cool because you can send a YouTube link to someone. You don't send strangeland.com to someone because you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah. It's like Googling kittens.
Yeah.
So
it ends up there somehow.
So it gets on YouTube, which was cool because I would go out with my friends and we'd be drinking and they go, dude, what's the coolest thing you ever saw flying? It's kind of like you were asking what it's like. And I go, oh, dude, I chased a UFO. And they're like, get out. And I'm like, no, seriously. So this is literally how it happened. So I was sitting with my friend, Matt. So Matt and I did he was the guy in my right seat of the A6 when I did my very first night trap, right? And we were friends to this day, right? Because when you do stuff like people like that, I had to have faith in him. He had to have faith in me. They become like your brother.
Yeah.
And these are guys that literally, I don't talk to him on a regular basis. Like Chris, who works at Apple. If Chris called me up tomorrow and said, dude, I need help, I need this, I'd be like, all right, let's figure this out and let's do it. Because they're like family. You do it. And most Navy guys, we don't send letters to each other weekly. I have friends that I haven't talked to in 10 years. If they showed up on my door, we, pop a bottle of wine, grab a beer, shoot the shit, take about first 10 minutes to catch up. And then it's like old times. And it's amazing how fast this happens. So
incredible. So
I'm out to dinner with Matt and I'm telling him this story and he's like, get out of here. So he goes back and he tells our friend Paco. Paco has fightersweep.com. It's a blog site. So Paco's obsessed. Like he is way into UFOs.
Yeah.
So Paco calls me up. He says, dude, I was talking to Maddie. That's what we call him. Dude, you got to tell me this story. He calls me one day and I'm like, I get a voicemail. Hey, give me a call. So I call him up. He's like, I got to write about this thing. I'm like, what? He goes, I got to write about it. I go, all right. I go, because at first I would say no. I'm like, dude, I don't want this out. My wife didn't even really know the whole story. We had the incident for about 2 days. They played the Goofy movies, me and the guy in my back seat, and it was Men in Black, but it had our names, protecting the world, protecting the Nimitz battle group type stuff. It was just funny shit like that.
Yeah.
So that was it. To me, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was like, okay, that's weird. We're never going to know what it was. I want to get out because this is important. Because there's all kinds of rumors. There's a group of folks that no one ever came out in suits to talk to us.
Nobody looking like me.
No.
Came out on a
no one came out on a helicopter. No one came out on an airplane.
I apologize if I say stupid things. Please correct me. But you have mentioned that, like on Rogan, I think that you watched it on a bigger screen. It felt like it was higher definition. So let me ask the question: is there a higher definition version, do you think, of the FLIR video that would give us more pixels and more information, presumably because of the high number? I would doubt it
because I don't know where. The stuff that the government released, I don't know where they got it. Okay, so the stuff that was on Strangeland and YouTube, someone pulled off of a secret, it looks like a rack. There's tape machines in there and it gets converted to digital and stored on a hard drive, and they pulled it off that hard drive and they put it on YouTube. No, it's just like, anytime, even a digital media, the more you copy digital media, there's some quality that degrades. Yeah. So this, you don't know how many times this has been copied. So we were looking, the videos I've seen are right off the original. They're high 8 tapes that's basically pulled off the back of the display. So it's not filmed with cameras. It's literally a digital feed that's pulled off the back and put onto a high 8 tape. Now it's actually digital to digital. It's not even on tapes anymore. So it's a pretty good feed. When you put it on, so instead of looking at it on your tiny little computer monitor or whatever, I'm looking at it on a 19-inch, because it was still normal TVs back there. We had just put flat screens in the ready room that I had bought so we could watch movies. So, because
a nice, huge 19-inch screen.
It was maybe 20. It was nice.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it was gigantic. This is 2005.
Yeah.
So when you get to the TV mode, when I say there's little things coming out of the bottom of it, you could see those. And it was very clear.
But in terms of the actual visual on the Tic Tac, was it? Did you get much more information from the clear?
The little things out of the bottom. You know, like if you look at a Cessna, there's little antennas hanging out of the bottom, kind of like that. There was two little things out of the bottom. There's nothing on the top. There was no plume, no IR, no visible propulsions, even heat signature. You know, it's all that stuff. And then the other thing that people didn't see is they didn't see the radar display, which that really raises the classification level, especially to see what the radar does when it's being jammed. About 2009, I'd gotten a call on my cell phone from a guy government employee, and said, hey, he told me who he was. He's still in the government. I'm friends with him. And he said, hey, we're going to investigate your Tic Tac thing. This is literally 5 years later. Yeah, 5 years later. And I said, okay, whatever. And he did a pretty good job. I call it the unofficial official report because it was really never official. It wasn't. But I'll give you the history of why I say that and why it never came out in FOIA requests. So he does the report. He sent me the report. And all he said is, hey, I'm going to send you this report. Please don't distribute this report. I said, okay. The report is now out because Harry Reid got it to George Knapp. And they were good enough to redact it, but there's a few versions of it unredacted. And I'm very protective of the other people that were involved in this. So Jim has talked, but he's off the grid. He doesn't talk to anyone now. The pilot of his airplane, she has come out on unidentified, but they don't release her name, although people are starting to do it. And she's had weird shit happen around her house. She's got kids, you know, so I'm very protective of her. And I've told people like Jeremy and George, if I know that the names ever came from you, I will never talk to you again about this. And Jeremy's been really good about it. And so has George. You know, and when you talk to, you know, Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon, you know, the group at TTSA, you know, that's the Tom DeLonge group that got started. So, and you go, well, you know, because I think Tom has caught a lot of crap for this, but he's actually, when you talk to him, he's very smart. And I asked him, how'd you get into this? And he goes, oh, when I was traveling around with Blink 182, he goes, you read a lot of books when you're laying in a van as you're driving to your next gig before you make it big. And he goes, and he was reading books and he read one of them on UFOs. I'm trying to think the title. It's one of the big ones that's out there, real popular. And so he started asking more, and through his fame with Blink 182 in the band, he got more and more connected. You know, if you talk to Chris Mellon, who is an Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and he's part of the Mellon, you know, dynasty, you know, from Carnegie Mellon type, very, very smart. He knows, he definitely knows how the government works because he worked there. And so when I went down to DC to talk to people, he's one of the first people I'll go to.
To me, there seems to be some stigma. So I come from the scientific community, and I really appreciate you talking to me today. And I think the people who listen to this include, you know, fellow faculty at MIT and major universities. And it feels like there's some stigma to the subject from the scientific community.
We have done in this country an absolutely terrible job with these things. So you go, and I joke, you know, go back to Roswell. So the first reports that came out of Roswell was, we have this crash flying saucer. That's literally what came out. And then magically the next day, it's a weather balloon and they're showing you pieces of Mylar. And you go, well, that doesn't look like what they showed us yesterday. Then you get into Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book is, it really did two things. It investigated sightings and it did everything it could to debunk and disprove, to the point where it actually went to discredit.
Sei uno scettico negazionista che vede solo lanterne cinesi, palloni meteorologici, fulmini globulari? Sai già cosa fare. Ma se invece non hai dei pregiudizi e sei solo curioso di capire cosa sta accadendo, partecipa, commenta e condividi il video. Al prossimo episodio!